At first glance, Chad and Jolene looked like two people who had built their entire world around cars. Their lives seemed to revolve around garages, welding sparks, roaring engines, clouds of smoke, and custom builds that most people would never even imagine attempting. For years, millions of viewers watched that world unfold through Bad Chad Customs. They watched Chad chase one impossible idea after another, while Jolene remained beside him through the pressure, the deadlines, and the chaos. To many viewers, she wasn't simply his partner. She appeared to be one of the people holding the entire operation together. But sometimes, the most important parts of a story are the things that never make it onto the screen. Then came a moment that changed the way some fans looked at everything they had watched before. There was no major television interview, no carefully produced documentary, and no dramatic primetime announcement. Instead, it was something much smaller, a short podcast clip that began circulating online. The recording was rough, the audio wasn't perfect, and the voice sounded noticeably tired. But viewers believed they recognized Chad. And suddenly, the conversation wasn't about a new build or another wild automotive creation. It was about Jolene. The reaction was immediate. Why was Chad discussing something so personal in such a small setting? What had happened behind the scenes? And why did he sound so emotionally exhausted? Those questions quickly became more important than the cars themselves. For the first time, some fans began wondering whether the public had ever truly understood what was happening in Chad and Jolene's lives away from the cameras. As the discussion spread, theories appeared almost instantly. Some people suggested there had been hidden relationship problems. Others suspected financial difficulties or disagreements inside the business. Some believed Jolene might be preparing to leave the show altogether. But according to the story being circulated, the reality was far more personal than any of those theories. Jolene had reportedly been dealing with a serious family responsibility away from the workshop, caring for an elderly relative in her hometown. This wasn't simply about occasionally checking in or making a quick visit. It involved the kind of responsibility where life can change with one unexpected phone call, forcing someone to leave everything behind and rush home. And the most striking part of the story was how little of that struggle appeared publicly. To understand why someone might keep such a situation private, you have to understand the strange reality of living in front of cameras. Once something becomes part of a reality television story, privacy can disappear very quickly. A personal emergency can become a storyline. A family's pain can become footage. A vulnerable person's most difficult moments can suddenly become entertainment for an audience that may never know the full context. For someone in Jolene's position, protecting that privacy could have meant keeping an enormous part of her life separate from the world of television. That created an impossible balancing act. On one side were the demands of Bad Chad Customs, the builds, the production schedule, the deadlines, the business, and the expectations of viewers. On the other was a private family situation that required attention just as urgently, but could not simply be explained to millions of strangers. And when those two worlds collided, something had to give. Looking back at older episodes, some fans began searching for details they might have overlooked the first time. Breaks in filming, unexpected delays, moments when Chad appeared unusually frustrated, times when Jolene seemed quieter than normal or mentally distracted. At the time, those moments could easily be interpreted as ordinary stress inside a demanding workshop. But once viewers had a different explanation in mind, those same scenes suddenly seemed to carry a different meaning. One reported delay became particularly interesting to fans. A major project was allegedly pushed back several days, and at the time, the explanation centered around normal production and supplier problems. Later, some viewers connected that period with the claim that Jolene had been dealing with an urgent family situation. Whether every detail of that connection is accurate is difficult to establish from the outside, but the theory changed how people interpreted the events. And that is what makes stories like this so complicated. It is tempting for the internet to search for a villain. People want someone to blame. They want one person who caused the conflict, and another person who suffered because of it. But sometimes real life doesn't work that way. Sometimes two people, can care deeply about each other while simultaneously dealing with problems the other person cannot fully understand. That possibility divided viewers. Some fans sympathized with Chad. From their perspective, discovering that someone close to you had been dealing with a major personal situation without fully explaining it could create an enormous emotional burden. Others understood Jolene's side. They believed that protecting a vulnerable family member's privacy could be more important than explaining every absence to the public. And perhaps the uncomfortable truth is that both perspectives can exist at the same time. Then came the moment fans had been waiting for. After days of speculation, Jolene reportedly broke her silence. But if viewers were expecting a dramatic confrontation, they didn't get one. There was no staged crying scene, no explosive accusation, and no attempt to turn the situation into another piece of entertainment. Instead, the story shifted once again, from what people thought had happened to what the people involved were actually willing to reveal. And that distinction matters, because when you're watching reality television, it's easy to believe you're seeing someone's entire life. You're not. You're seeing selected moments, edited together into a story. The cameras can capture the cars, the arguments, the celebrations, and the finished builds, but they cannot automatically capture every private struggle happening outside the frame. Sometimes the biggest story isn't what the camera shows, it's what the camera never had permission to see. Jolene didn't respond with a dramatic interview. She didn't sit in front of a camera and turn the situation into another television moment. Instead, she simply released a statement. The situation also raised another uncomfortable question. What happens when a private crisis becomes interesting to a television audience? Once producers, networks, and viewers recognize that a personal story could attract attention, where does the boundary between someone's real life and entertainment actually exist? According to the claims surrounding the story, there was pressure to bring more of Jolene's private circumstances into the public conversation, but she reportedly refused to turn those personal experiences into television content. If accurate, that decision says something important about the boundaries she wanted to maintain. She wasn't willing to trade someone else's privacy for ratings, attention, or a bigger storyline. And that may be one of the most revealing parts of the entire story, because fame has a way of making privacy look like secrecy. When audiences become emotionally invested in public figures, they can begin to feel entitled to explanations. Today, Chad's workshop continues to evolve, with different people contributing their skills and experience to various projects. New fabricators, mechanics, and specialists can help keep the work moving forward. Yet longtime viewers sometimes say that something about the old dynamic feels different, and perhaps that is inevitable, because Bad Chad Customs was never only about the vehicles. The cars were the centerpiece, but the personalities around them became part of the experience. Chad's unpredictable creativity, Jolene's more structured approach, the arguments, the disagreements, the moments of silence, and even the strange chemistry that developed after years of working together, all of those elements became part of what viewers connected with. You can replace equipment. You can bring new people into a workshop. You can start new projects and build completely different vehicles. But chemistry between people isn't something you can simply manufacture.